Hey everybody, June 16th, 2012, and since I've been lagging on the typing, I'm doing a little vlog for you guys today. So here's my attempt to work with some technology. Alright, as you guys know, this is kind of a weird weekend for me. Yesterday, June 15th, was the 3rd anniversary of my friend's suicide, and then tomorrow being Father's Day, it'll be the 2nd year without my dad. And this is, I find myself the last 2 years, and the same yesterday, spending a lot of time being really introspective and doing the deep philosophical thoughts of life. And I wanted to share a couple things with you guys that actually popped up yesterday through this experience. Yesterday I stopped at my grandparents' house to visit for a little bit, and my grandfather was talking to me. And as he's talking, I heard this zzz, 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 and then he started talking some more, and I kept hearing this zzz, 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 and he started talking some more, and I and pretty soon that was so distracting that all I heard was wah 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 wah, Charlie Brown speak from my grandfather, and from over in the window. And I got up to investigate and see what it was. And what I found is there was this bee. This bee had become entangled in the spider web, and the spider had crawled out and was trying to get the bee. And the bee was doing everything it could to keep the spider away, but the bee was tangled up fully in the web. And the spider was just kind of angling and waiting for the bee to tire out, and it would come in and try to strike, but the bee would zzz and would chase it away. And the spider would back up, and then it would try a different angle and try to come in again, but the bee kept fighting it off. I got a little closer and I was really watching this and studying it, and in the midst of all this thinking, I was, there's this life and death struggle going on, right? And you think about in the animal world, it's much more simple. There is a defined life and death, and there's a defined, or not so much defined life and death, but there's a life and death struggle. There's a need to feed, there's a need to reproduce, and that's about it. It's not as complicated as our world, where we need to be in the latest fashion, or we need to have the nicest style haircut, or the nicest clothes, or go to the best schools, or anything. It doesn't exist there. It's just a simple life and death. And I'm watching this go on and thinking, well, what happens? And I sat down and I started to try to listen to my grandfather, and I kept hearing the zzz, zzz, zzz so much, and I finally got up again and looked, and the bee was still fighting, still struggling. And I was like, man, this bee, it really wants to live. It does not want to die now. The spider obviously really wants to eat, but I can interject one way or the other. What do I choose? So I got in there and I put a little piece of paper down and kind of pushed the bee away. And the bee was free. But it was still so tangled up in the web. The spider had retreated by this point, still tangled up in all the extra web parts on it, that it's it can't fly. It's caught up. The web's wrapped around its leg, wrapped around its head. Its wings can still kind of get free, but it's fired up. So I try to get in there. I can't. I'm afraid to get stung. So I figure, it'll work it out. The bee doesn't want to give up. And I go and sit back down, and I'm talking to my grandfather a little bit more. And I keep hearing this for no kidding, at least 20 more minutes. And I got up and went over there, and the bee's still trying to, so I tried to help pull the webbing off. I tried, and I just couldn't get it off. And I was like, I'm going to let nature take its course. If it can get free, it's going to get free. Sat back down for a little bit and talked to my grandfather, and suddenly I didn't hear the zzz anymore. I figured, maybe the bee's gotten free. And I walked back over to the bee. And instead of getting free, the bee had gotten tired. It had been fighting and fighting and fighting for so long, trying to stay alive, that it was worn out, so it wasn't zzing anymore. And I went down to see if it was still alive, and as soon as I touched it, the bee still had fight left in it, but it was trying a different strategy, just trying to get free, because what it had been doing wasn't working before. So now it was taking a new approach. It was trying to conserve its energy, and rather than fight, it was trying to be strategic about it and push the webbing off its leg. So I went over there and tried to help it again. The bee's flying around. It's afraid. It's afraid. I think it doesn't want me to squish it, doesn't want me anything. And so I try for a minute. I can't get it free. I walk away. 20 minutes later, I don't hear noise anymore, and I go back over. The bee's lying perfectly still. And I go over to it, and I get a little close to see if it's moving. It's not moving. I go to touch it, and the bee's still there. It had just gotten so tired from fighting for so long, it was trying to rest. And I would wager it was trying to rest to just try to rebuild its strength to try to escape again. And so this time, I got a couple little thin, almost like toothpick things, and there was this piece of the web that had kind of a twig attached to it, and the bee was trying to pull that twig along, but it couldn't because it's so tied up, so it was this extra weight was weighting it down. And I pinned one part of the twig down, and I kind of, with the other toothpick, really gently helped get the webbing off the bee. And once I freed it from that, all of a sudden it could fly again, and it was flying all over the window, But it was in such this disillusioned state that it almost flew right back into the web that it ended up before. I was like, okay, well, this bee and I have been working for an hour trying to keep it alive. I can't let it fly back to the spider now. The spider's still over there, waiting for the bee. Can't let that happen. So I go and get a cup. Get the cup, put the bee in the cup, walk it outside, put the bee down, and the bee flies away. And I thought about that a lot yesterday because I think in life, as we get older, we're so quick to wanting to give up. We're so quick to want to just immediately admit defeat and accept it, and that's it. And you think about it, when you were a kid and you first tried to tie your shoes, could you tie them the first time? No, not at all. But did you give up? Absolutely not. You wanted to tie the shoes. And now all of a sudden, later on, however many years later, you've mastered it. When you were a kid, did 2 plus 2 equal 4 right away? Absolutely not. Did 5 plus 5 come to 10? No. It took a long time for 5 plus 5 to equal 10, and consistently over and over again. The same can be said for 6 plus 6 equals 12, and 120 plus 130 equaling 250. It took a long time. It took practice. It took persistence for those numbers to add up to what you now know today, for you to master that skill. When you tried to get dressed the first time, was it easy to put one pant leg on over the other? No. But you persevered. You didn't give up on it. You didn't just stop. You didn't give up. You didn't quit. But as we get older, we lose that. And as we get more sophisticated, we use more of our mind and more of our heart, we lose that raw desire to survive like the bee has. Why? Life's going to be hard. Shit's going to happen. That's just a part of life. It's always going to be there. But it's worth it to keep fighting. Don't give up. You know, if that bee would have given up at one point, the spider would have had it. The only reason that bee lived was because it kept fighting, and finally it got attention from something else. You know, a complete stranger. The bee doesn't know me, obviously, and I don't know the bee. Although we become very acquainted, and I call him Bee Berry. It didn't know, though. You never know who or what can come and interject and help at any given moment. But you'll never find out if you don't keep fighting. It's worth it. It's worth that persistence. It pays off every single time. You think about in your life all the stuff that you tried. You know, when you first start a new job, I would willing to bet that you walked into that job and you did not know everything there. And the first day you went home, it's like, oh shit, it's so hard. How am I going to do this? But then the next day it was made a little bit more sense. And the next day, you finally got a little better. And then you found in the routine of things. And pretty soon, all of a sudden, a couple years have gone by and you've been a master of it. And every day becomes so easy. And if you were to stop and think back to when you first started, and how hard it was, but now look at the reward you reaped from being persistent with it. Persistence is key in living life. Again, life is going to happen. Shit's going to hit the fan. But when it does, you have choices. We always have choices. Are you going to give up? Or are you going to keep fighting? Because the payoff with fighting is the new sense of freedom, right? And I can't speak for the bee. You know, and the bee is obviously a metaphor in this all, but I can't speak for it if it appreciates its freedom a lot more. But I'm sure there was at one point when that spider was coming down really trying to get at the bee. If the bee has a conscious stream of thought, it probably thought, wow, I'm never going to get to smell fresh air again. I'm never going to get to be in the flowers. I'm never going to get to taste the sweet taste of pollen. I'm never going to get to enjoy the wind flowing through my wings. All those little simple everyday pleasures that are a part of life are going to be taken away just like that. Does the bee appreciate it more now? I don't know. But what I do know is with humans, with you, me, and everybody else, is we have the ability to do that each and every day. When the shit's happening, when hard things are happening, we can step away from it for a little bit and just smell the roses. Literally smell the roses and smell them as if you're never going to smell them before, and I guarantee you they'll smell that much sweeter. When you're outside today, walk around, pay attention to how the wind feels going through your hair. You know, just notice what it feels like to see a stranger smile at you on the street. Hug a friend, but when you hug them, really, really hug them tight, and notice how much that deepens the connection between the two of you. It's the little things, you guys, and they're worth fighting for, and we forget them so quickly in times of triumph, or times of tragedy, and times of challenge. But don't give up on it. Fight for it. Persist with it. It's so worth it. Just keep buzzing. See you guys next time.